Which of these players is more profitable to bluff? The loose one, who plays too many hands, or the tight one, who barely enters a pot? Most players think they know the answer, but they're dead wrong. After coaching over 250 players, we started noticing a pattern. Almost everybody thinks about bluffing completely backwards. Today, I'll show you why and how to print money bluffing the right players while everybody else keeps torching in all the wrong spots. All right, so first hand here, and we're gonna play the same spot against a loose player and a tight player. So we see loose Lonnie opens in the cutoff. We're going to 3-bet on the button, and loose Lonnie is going to call. And after loose Lonnie calls this 3-bet, his range is going to look something like this. So you see here we have him continuing just a bit wider than equilibrium. He's continuing with all these gapped suited connected cards, some partials of these offsuit broadways, and then he's 4-betting pretty much the queens plus, sometimes the jacks as well, and the ace king up here. So kind of a typical loose live player, continuing maybe a couple pips wider than optimal. All right, so we are going to go to a flop, 10-6-4. We flop a flush draw. He checks it over. We are going to c-bet small here, choosing the size where they raise their strong stuff, call with their weak stuff, and he is going to call. We go to a turn, which is the innocuous deuce of diamonds. And now at this point, loose Lonnie is capped, but he's going to be relatively inelastic. He's got a bunch of hands like 10x and flush draws. So we choose the biggest size here on the turn that still leaves us that big boy overbet behind on the river. Loose Lonnie is going to call. We go to a river, which is a 7. We brick everything, and now loose Lonnie checks it over to us. So a very loose player here. Should we be emptying the clip with a bricked king high flush draw? Now let's say we play this exact same spot, except it's against a tight player. We're gonna call him Nitty Nedward, and we're going to 3-bet here. He is going to call. So let's take a look at Nitty Nedward's range here after he calls a 3-bet. And Nitty Nedward, as opposed to loose Lonnie, he's just going to be a couple pips tighter. So you see here, he's only got the best suited aces. He's got like this ace 5, ace 4 suited. He's folding kind of the garbage suited aces. He's folding the garbage king X. He's folding the garbage suited connectors. He's just not 4-betting quite as much with the top of his range. This player is on the nittier side, so his range is going to look quite a bit tighter. So on this river, who is the more profitable player to bluff? Is it loose Lonnie or is it Nitty Nedward? Well, let's jump in, let's do a little bit of digging, and let's find out. So we see with this preflop range, loose Lonnie gets to this river with about 78 combos. He has about 1.7 combos of sets that get here, some 10s, some 7s. The 6s and 4s almost always raise on the flop or turn. He's got 2.9 combos of 2 pair here, primarily the 7-6, some 10-7, 7-4, 6-4. He's got a couple combos of over pairs here, primarily a couple combos of jacks that didn't 4-bet preflop or raise on the flop or turn. And then he's got 25.7 combos of top pair, the 10x here. So if we add all this up for loose Lonnie, the top pair, the over pairs, the 2 pair, the sets, 41% of his range on this river is going to be top pair plus. If we look at the exact same situation for Nitty Nedward, he only has about 34.1 combos to get to the river. Remember, he was much tighter pre-flop. And of those 34.1 combos, let's look at how many are strong. So sets, he only has about 0.5 sets here, primarily pocket 10s and pocket 7s. 2 pair, he's only got about 0.6 combos, 7-6 suited. Over pairs, he's got some more combos here. He's got some queens, he's got some jacks, so he's got about 7.3 combos of over pairs. And then top pair here, his suited 10x, he doesn't have the offsuit variety because Nitty Nedward is a little bit tighter pre-flop. So he has about 10.5 combos of over pairs. So overall, Nitty Nedward actually has less strong hands in his range than loose Lonnie, right? Well, kind of, but as a percentage of his range that gets to the river, Nitty Nedward's range is actually a lot stronger. 55% of Nitty Nedward's range on this river is going to be top pair plus, as compared to loose Lonnie, only 41% of his range is going to be top pair plus. Bear with me for just 1 second because I promise I'm gonna bring this back around and actually connect it to the real games that you play. Let's look at equilibrium for just a second. We see here loose Lonnie on this river when he has an overpair. In equilibrium, he's never supposed to fold, and overpair's calling 100% of the time. When he has top pair in equilibrium, supposed to call about 75% of the time. And when he has second pair or third pair, supposed to call about 40% of the time and 35% of the time, respectively. This means if loose Lonnie starts folding top pair more than 25% of the time, or starts folding second pair more than 60% of the time, that our bluffs are going to print, I feel pretty good. Even if a player is loose, we don't have to get them to fold overpairs to have a profitable bluff here. We just have to get them to fold weak top pair, maybe a hand like Jack 10, 10 9, 10 8. We just have to get them to fold these hands more than 25% of the time to have a super profitable bluff on this river. When we compare this to Nitty Nedward, because his range is so much stronger, in equilibrium, he's supposed to make bigger folds. We see here he's supposed to fold overpairs 20% of the time. He's supposed to fold top pair nearly 57% of the time. We compare this to Loose Lonnie. Loose Lonnie was never folding overpairs in equilibrium, and he's only folding top pair 25% of the time. Nitty Nedward here is supposed to fold top pair 57% of the time. So going back to what this means in the real world, if we can get Loose Lonnie to fold top pair more than equilibrium, which is just 25-26% of the time, we are going to print with our bluffs. As compared to Nitty Nedward, because he gets to this river with such a strong range, more than 50% of his range is going to be top pair plus, he actually in equilibrium is supposed to fold some strong hands on this river. He's supposed to fold overpairs. He's supposed to fold top pair nearly 60% of the time. I don't know about you, but I don't feel good about bluffing a guy when he's supposed to fold top pair 60% of the time in equilibrium. All right, let's make just a couple assumptions on this river. Let's say when we go all in, Loose Lonnie never folds overpairs. He calls with his top pair 75% of the time, which is just about equilibrium. And let's say when he has 7x or 6x, he only calls about 20% of the time on this river. And you see, when we make these assumptions, that just means our bluffs are going to be absolutely printing on this river. We look at our exact hand, King Queen of clubs here, and we're winning nearly $61 by jamming on this river. Look at all these hands we're turning into a bluff. We're turning Ace King off into a bluff. We're turning Ace Queen off into a bluff. We're turning Ace Queen of clubs into a bluff. Ace King of clubs into a bluff. Almost every hand in our range here, except our value hands, are just being turned into a bluff because Loose Lonnie is just getting here with too wide of a range. Now let's make the exact same assumptions against Nitty Nedward. So he's just never folding an overpair. He's calling with top pair 25% of the time, and he's calling with second and third pair 20% of the time. The exact same thing we did against Loose Lonnie. And now our range that goes all in on this river looks quite a bit different. You see with King Queen of clubs here, we're actually losing nearly $61. So we went from winning $60+ bluffing Loose Lonnie to losing $60+ bluffing Nitty Nedward on this river. You see, all of our value hands are just always jamming because his range is so strong that we think he's going to be underfolding. And you see here on this river, we are pretty much just never jamming whenever we have a bluff. So it seems a little counterintuitive at first, but the more profitable player to bluff on this river is actually going to be the loose player rather than the tight player, because the loose player gets there with such a weak range, we just don't need to get him to fold that many strong hands to have a profitable bluff, whereas the tight player gets there with so many strong hands that we are counting on him folding top pair and some overpairs in order to have a profitable bluff, and I would feel a lot less good about getting somebody to fold overpairs and all their good top pair than just trying to get a guy to fold his weak shit. Live poker is an extremely complex, beautiful game. If you want to actually crush the live poker games you play in, looking at equilibrium solver outputs just not going to get the job done. If you want more like this, if you want to learn what players to bluff all the time, what players that we should probably just not be bluffing all that much, if you want all the counterintuitive sauce and to be one step ahead of everybody you're playing against in your pool, check out our 7-day crash course. We are booking now for summer. Sign up. I will see you there. All right, now instead of loose versus tight, let's look at aggressive versus passive. All right, so in this hand, Aggro Agnes is going to open in a cutoff. We're going to 3-bet on the button with ace 3 of hearts, and he is going to call. So this going to be Aggro Agnes's range going to the flop. We see he's just going to be pretty aggressive, just 4-betting linear out of position. He's going to be 4-betting these jacks, queens, kings, ace queen suited, ace king, maybe some ace 5 suited as well. So a pretty standard, close to equilibrium range. He's just going to be 4-betting rather aggressively cutoff versus button here. And we're going to play the same spot against passive Pascal. And when we 3-bet, he is also going to call. And passive Pascal also going to continue with a very reasonable range to the flop here. But we see he's just not as aggressive with his 4-bets. Maybe he's still 4-betting some queens, kings, ace, king, but he's not going to be as aggressive going linear. So we see he's not going to have the ace queen suited in there. Maybe not the jacks and tens. Maybe not got the ace-5 suited, as opposed to Aggro Agnes, who's just going to have some more aggressive 4-bets in there. All right, going to the flop here, 10-6-4. Once again, we are going to c-bet, and Aggro Agnes is going to call. And on this flop, true to his name, we're gonna have Aggro Agnes play aggressively. If he has a set like 6s, 4s, or 10s, he's gonna raise around 80% of the time. If he's got top pair, maybe a hand like ace-10 suited, he's gonna raise about a quarter of the time. If he's got a big combo draw like 7-8 of clubs, he'll raise about 80% of the time. A naked flush draw like king-queen of clubs will raise about a quarter of the time. An open-in straight draw or a double gutter like 7-8 will raise about 25% of the time. And a gut shot like 8-9 suited will raise about 10% of the time. So overall, playing relatively aggressively here on the flop, but nothing egregious, just relatively aggressively with both his value hands and his big draws. For passive Pascal, we're gonna have him play just a little bit more passively. His sets are only going to raise 40% as opposed to 80%. His top pair is only gonna raise 12.5% of the time as opposed to 25%. His combo draws will raise 40% of the time as opposed to 80%. The flush draws and the open-enders will raise about 12.5% as well, and the gut shots will raise just 5% of the time. So he's not playing like a total nit, just a little bit more passive here on this flop. Now the deuce of clubs comes in on the turn, so the front door flush completes. Aggro Agnes checks it over, and we are going to continue for a small size here on this turn. And once again, gonna have Aggro Agnes stay true to his namesake. He's going to continue playing aggressively here. If he has a flush, he's gonna raise about 80% of the time to this small 1/3 pot size on the turn. If he has a set that trapped on the flop, maybe those mostly call here, but they still raise 20% of the time. And he's gonna have some bluffs here as well. If he has hands like ace queen with a club or king queen with a club, those type of blocker bluffs will start raising here on the turn about 20% of the time as well. Same turn for passive Pascal, but he's gonna play a little bit more passively. So he's just gonna raise about half the time of Aggro Agnes. His flushes raise 40% of the time, his sets raise about 10% of the time, and his blocker bluffs raise about 10% of the time. So those hands like ace king, ace queen, king queen with a club here going to raise about 10% of the time. So again, not super nitty, just a little bit more passive than Aggro Agnes. So we go to the river, which is the innocuous 7 of spades, and now we are going to look at both of these players' ranges on this river, both Aggro Agnes and passive Pascal. First, Aggro Agnes, he's gonna have about 44.6 combos in his range getting to this river, and of those combos, 2.1 will be flushes, 2.8 combos of sets, and he's actually gonna have 0 combos of overpairs here getting to the river. Remember, he was super aggressive pre-flop with his 4-bet. So overall, getting to this river, Aggro Agnes, only 11% of his range is going to be overpairs plus. He's just going to have a relatively weak range getting to this river that mostly consists of top pair and under pairs. Compared to passive Pascal, he's gonna have 71.3 combos, so he's gonna have more combos that get to this river than Aggro Agnes. And he's actually gonna have about 9 combos of flushes here. He's got about 6.9 combos of sets, and he's got 7.9 combos of overpairs still available in his range. So on this river, passive Pascal, 33% of his range is gonna be overpairs plus, and 22% of his range is gonna be sets and flushes, compared to Aggro Agnes, only 11% of his range on this river was overpairs plus. Which player is going to be more profitable to bluff? If we look at Aggro Agnes first, when we jam for 2x pot on this river, he's supposed to never fold a set and never fold a flush in equilibrium. When he does have top pair here, he's supposed to call about 30% of the time on this river in equilibrium. As opposed to passive Pascal, when he has a set here, he's only supposed to call about 75% of the time. So he's supposed to fold some sets here because he has so many flushes in his range. Also, his overpairs and his top pair are only supposed to call about 10% of the time. So if he has an overpair like queens or jacks here, he's supposed to fold nearly 90% of the time in equilibrium. That means if he starts calling more than 10% of the time with his overpairs or more than 75% of the time with his sets, our bluffs just aren't going to be profitable against this player. So let's make a few assumptions on this river for Aggro Agnes and passive Pascal. Let's say when they have a set or a flush, they just never fold to a 2x pot size jam on this river. When they have an overpair, it's 50-50. They sometimes call, sometimes fold. And when they have top pair, they hero us about a quarter of the time. When they have a hand like ace 10, king 10, jack 10, something like that. So we see here against Aggro Agnes with ace 3 of hearts, we're winning nearly $105 by going for the 2x pot size jam on this river. See all of these hands in our range that are bluffing. We have a hand like ace king of hearts, ace king of spades, ace king of diamonds. These hands always bluffing. When we have ace king off, these hands almost always more profitable to jam the river as a a bluff. Hell, when we have pretty much anything except a flush on this river, going to be more profitable to jam as a 2x pot size bluff. We're just jamming as a bluff almost all the time on this river against Aggro Agnes. Compare this to Passive Pascal, and Ace 3 of Hearts is losing $53 on this river by jamming. And you see here, we're just rarely jamming on this river. And when we are, it is going to be for value. Our value hands like Ace 9 of clubs, like Ace 8 of clubs, King Jack of clubs. These are the hands that are going to be more profitable to jam on this river. When we have a bluff like Ace King of spades, King Jack of diamonds, these hands are just never jamming because Passive Pascal's range is so strong, he's probably going to be overcalling relative to equilibrium. So once again, we can see kind of counterintuitive, going to be more profitable to bluff the aggressive player than the passive player. Now let's look at one more spot, and I want to dig in when we are the preflop caller against an aggressive player and a passive player and see one more time which is more profitable to bluff. All right, so this time we open in the cutoff, Aggro Agnes going to 3-bet on the button, and we are going to call. We're going to play the same hand against Aggro Agnes and Passive Pascal again. So Aggro Agnes going to have a wide 3-bet range on the button, maybe something like this. And when we get 3-bet by Passive Pascal here on the button, maybe his range looks more something like this, just a little bit tighter. Still gonna have some suited connectors, maybe some wheel aces still in there, but not nearly as aggressive as Aggro Agnes. Now we're gonna go to a flop 10-6-4. Once again, we're gonna check it over. Both Aggro Agnes and Passive Pascal are going to c-bet. We're just gonna assume both of these players are kind of competent. They're just going to be nearly range c-betting on these flops, so we are going to call. Turn is a deuce of diamonds. We check it over, and Aggro Agnes and Passive Pascal are both going to double barrel for a $200 size on this turn. So what is their range double barreling here? Aggro Agnes is going to bet his overpairs 100% of the time on this wet dynamic board. Let's say he's betting top pairs, say 95% of the time. He's going to bet his draws here about 90% of the time as well. And this guy is aggressive, right? It's a 3-bet pot. He's super aggro. So we'll say here when he has air that he's betting about 70-75% of the time. His showdown value might just check back, but his complete whiffs here, hands like Queen Jack of hearts or something like that, we'll say his air is betting about 75% of the time. Conversely, for Passive Pascal, we'll say his overpairs are also betting 100% of the time here, but his top pair maybe betting 75% of the time. He'll check back some of his weaker top pair here on the turn in a 3-bet pot. Maybe hands like Jack 10, 10-9 suited, something like that would check back here some of the time. His draws are betting 50-50. He's probably betting his stronger draws, his combo draws, but he might check back with some gut shots or maybe some of his weaker flush draws here. And then his air, his hands like Queen Jack of hearts are only betting here about 25% of the time as opposed to 75. So he's not a complete nit, but he's just going to be a little bit more passive than Aggro Agnes. So for Aggro Agnes on this turn, let's look at his range. He's going to have about 109.3 combos in his range that bet on this turn. Of that range, he's got about 22% overpairs, 14% top pair, and 3% sets. So about 39% of his range that bets big on this turn is going to be top pair plus. Let's compare that to Passive Pascal. He's going to have about 58.3 combos of his range that bet on this turn. Of that range, 41% is going to be overpair, 17% is going to be top pair, and about 5% is going to be sets. So his range is going to be 63% top pair plus that bets on this turn. Let's say we decide to check raise jam this turn as a bluff. Against Aggro Agnes in equilibrium, he's supposed to call with top pair and overpairs 100% of the time. He's never supposed to fold when he has top pair plus. His flush draws are supposed to call about 40%, and his second and third pair, hands like pocket 9, 6x, 5-4 suited, are supposed to call about 40% of the time here on this turn. As opposed to Passive Pascal, if we check raise jam this turn, his overpairs are only supposed to call about 85% of the time. So he's supposed to fold overpairs 15% of the time. He's supposed to fold top pairs here 43% of the time, and he's supposed to fold second and third pair here 80% of the time here. And he's supposed to fold flush draws 90% of the time. So we see Passive Pascal, when we check raise jam here, is just supposed to fold a lot stronger hands. Let's say we lock both of these players. Let's say Aggro Agnes and Passive Pascal. Let's say when we check raise jam, an overpair never folds. If they have jacks plus, they're hero calling us off 100% of the time. Let's say when they have top pair, a hand like ace 10, king 10, queen 10, they're calling 80% of the time. And let's say when they have a flush draw, they're calling about 40% of the time. So their strong flush draws call, their combo draws call, maybe their weak flush draws fold. And then when they have second or third pair, they're only calling about 20% 20% of the time heroing us here. Here's our response to Aggro Agnes. We see 8-7 of diamonds is just printing nearly $21 here by check raise jamming the turn. You see we're raising the turn nearly 33% of the time here. We're turning hands like pocket fives into a bluff, 5-4 suited into a bluff. 6x is getting turned into a bluff here. Lots of flush draws, hands like queen 9 of clubs, king 9 of clubs. All of these hands are printing by check raise jamming on the turn against Aggro Agnes because his range is so wide and relatively weak. Now compare this to passive Pascal. Look, we're only raising 6% of the time. What hands are we jamming? Our sets. We're jamming pocket 10s, pocket 6s, pocket deuces, pocket 4s. That is really it. If we look at 8-7 of diamonds, we are losing $164 by check raise jamming on this turn. We are just never jamming as a bluff because passive Pascal's range is just too strong, and we are assuming here that because his range is so strong, he's probably going to underfold relative to equilibrium. Remember, in equilibrium, he's supposed to fold over pairs some of the time. He's supposed to fold top pair more than 50% of the time. And if those things just aren't going to be true, our bluffs are just not going to be profitable against this player. All right, guys, hopefully this video on which players are most profitable to bluff opened some eyeballs and changed some minds, and most of all, turned you into the biggest boy possible. Thank you guys, and have a gentle